Chapter 4. So what do you say? Alex opened his eyes. So he was still alive. That was a nice surprise. He was lying on a bed in a large, comfortable room. The bed was modern, but the room was old, with beams running across the ceiling, a stone fireplace, and narrow windows in ornate wooden frames. He had seen rooms like this in books when he was studying Shakespeare. He would have said the building was Elizabethan. It had to be somewhere in the country. There was no sound of traffic. Outside he could see trees. Someone had undressed him. His school uniform was gone. Instead, he was wearing loose pyjamas, silk from the feel of them. From the light outside, he would have guessed it was early evening. He found his watch lying on the table beside the bed, and he reached out for it. The time was 12 o'clock. It had been 4:30 when he was shot, with what must have been a drugged dart. He lost a whole night and half a day. There was a bathroom leading off the bedroom, bright white tiles and a huge shower behind a cylinder of glass and chrome. Alex stripped off the pyjamas and stood for 5 minutes under a jet of streaming water. He felt much better after that. He went back into the bedroom and opened the cupboard. Someone had been to his house in Chelsea. All his clothes were here, neatly hung up. He wondered what Crawley had told Jack. Presumably, he would have made up some story to explain his sudden disappearance. He took out a pair of Gap combat trousers, a Nike sweatshirt and trainers, got dressed, then sat on the bed and waited. About 15 minutes later, there was a knock and the door opened. A young Asian woman in a nurse's uniform came in, beaming. "Oh, you're awake and dressed. How are you feeling? Not too groggy, I hope. Please come this way. Mr. Blunt is expecting you for lunch." Alex hadn't spoken a word to her. He followed her out of the room, along a corridor, and down a flight of stairs. The house was indeed Elizabethan, with wooden panels along the corridors, ornate chandeliers, and oil paintings of old bearded men in tunics and ruffs. The stairs led down into a tall, galleried room with a rug spread out over flagstones and a fireplace big enough to park a car in. A long, polished wooden table had been laid for 3. Alan Blunt and a dark, rather masculine woman unwrapping a sweet were already sitting down. Mrs. Blunt? Alex? Blunt smiled briefly, as if it was something he didn't enjoy doing. "It's good of you to join us." Alex sat down. "Didn't give me a lot of choice." "Yes, I don't quite know what Crawley was thinking of, shooting you like that, but I suppose it was the easiest way. May I introduce my colleague, Mrs. Jones?" The woman nodded at Alex. Her eyes seemed to examine him minutely, but she said nothing. "Who are you?" Alex asked. "What do you want with me?" "I'm sure you have a great many questions, but first, let's see." Blunt must have pressed a hidden button or else he's been overheard, for at that precise moment a door opened and a waiter, in white jacket and black trousers, appeared carrying 3 plates. "I hope you eat meat," Blunt continued. "Today is quart d'agneau." "You mean roast lamb?" "The chef is French." Alex waited until the food had been served. Blunt and Mrs. Jones drank red wine. He stuck to water. Finally, Blunt began. "As I'm sure you've gathered," he said, "the Royal and General is not a bank. In fact, it doesn't exist. It's nothing more than a cover. And it follows, of course, that your uncle had nothing to do with banking. He worked for me. My name, as I've told you at the funeral, is Blunt. I am Chief Executive of the Special Operations Division of MI6. And your uncle was, for want of a better word, a spy." Alex couldn't help smiling. "You mean like James Bond?" "Similar, although we don't go in for numbers, 00 and all the rest of it. He was a field agent, highly trained and very courageous. He successfully completed assignments in Iran, Washington, Hong Kong, and Cairo, to name but a few. I imagine this must come as a bit of a shock to you. Alex thought about the dead man and what he knew of him. His privacy, his long absences abroad, and the times he had come home injured. A bandaged arm one time, a bruised face another. Little accidents. Alex had been told. But now it all makes sense. I'm not shocked, he said. Blunt cut a neat slice of meat. Ian Ryder's luck ran out on his last mission, he went on. He had been working undercover here in England, in Cornwall, and was driving back to London to make a report when he was killed. You saw his car at the yard. Stryker and Son, Alex muttered. Who are they? Just people we use. We have budget restraints. We have to contract some of our work out. Mrs. Jones here is our head of special operations. She gave your uncle his last assignment. We're very sorry to have lost him, Alex. The woman spoke for the first time. She didn't sound very sorry at all. Do you know who killed him? Yes. Are you going to tell me? No, not now. Why not? Because you don't need to know. Not at this stage, anyway. Alright. Alex put down his knife and fork. He hadn't actually eaten anything. My uncle was a spy. Thanks to you, he's dead. I found out too much, so you knocked me out and brought me here. Where am I, by the way? This is one of our training centres, Mrs. Jones said. You've brought me here because you don't want me to tell anyone what I know. Is that what this is all about? Because if it is, I'll sign whatever it is you want me to, and whatever you want me to do. But then I'd like to go home. This is all crazy anyway. I've had enough, I'm out of here. Blunt coughed quietly. It's not quite as easy as that, he said. Why not? It's certainly true that you did draw attention to yourself, both at the Breakers Yard and then at our offices in Liverpool Street. And it's also true that what you know and what I'm about to tell you must go no further. But the fact of the matter is, Alex, we need your help. My help? Yes, he paused. Have you heard of a man called Herod Sale? Alex thought for a moment. I've seen his name in the newspapers. He's something to do with computers and racehorses. Doesn't he come from somewhere in Egypt? No, from the Lebanon. Blunt took a sip of wine. Let me tell you his story, Alex. I'm sure you'll find it of interest. Herod Sale was born in complete poverty in the back streets of Beirut. His father was a failed hairdresser. His mother took in washing. He had 9 brothers and 4 sisters, all living together in 3 small rooms, along with a family goat. Young Herod never went to school, and he should have ended up unemployed, unable to read or write, like the rest of his family. But when he was 7, something occurred that changed his life. He was walking down Olive Street, in the middle of Beirut, when he happened to see an upright piano fall out of a 14th-story window. Apparently it was being moved and somehow overturned. Anyway, there were a couple of American tourists walking along the pavement below, and they would have both been crushed, no doubt about it. Except at the last minute, Herod threw himself at them and pushed them out of the way. The piano missed them all by a millimetre. Of course, they were enormously grateful to the young waif, and it now turned out that they were very, very rich. They made inquiries about him and discovered how poor he was. The very clothes he was wearing had been passed down by all 9 of his brothers. And so, out of gratitude, they more or less adopted him. Flew him out of Beirut and put him into a school over here, where he made astonishing progress. He got 9 O-levels, and here's an amazing coincidence. At the age of 15, he actually found himself sitting next to a boy who would grow up to become Prime Minister of Great Britain. Our present Prime Minister, in fact. The 2 of them were at school together. I'll move quickly forward. After school, Sale went to Cambridge, where he got a first in economics. Then he set out on a career that went from success to success. His own radio station, record label, computer software. Yet, he even found time to buy a string of racehorses. Although for some reason, They always seem to come last. But what drew him to our attention was his most recent invention, a quite revolutionary computer, which he calls the Stormbreaker. Stormbreaker? Alex remembered the file he had found in Ian Ryder's office. Things were beginning to come together. The Stormbreaker is being manufactured by Sale Enterprises, Mrs. Jones said. There's been a lot of talk about the design. It has a black keyboard and black casing, with a lightning bolt going down the side, Alex said. He'd seen a picture of it in PC Review. It doesn't only look different, Blunt cut in. It's based on a completely new technology. It uses something called the round processor. I don't suppose that'll mean anything to you. It's an integrated circuit on a sphere of silicon about 1 millimetre in diameter, Alex said. It's 90% cheaper to produce than an ordinary chip because the whole thing is sealed in, so you don't need clean rooms for production. Yes, Blunt coughed. Well, the point is, later today, Sale Enterprises are going to make quite a remarkable announcement. They are planning to give away thousands, tens of thousands of these computers, in fact. It's their intention to ensure that every secondary school in Britain gets its own Stormbreaker. It's an unparalleled act of generosity. Sale's way of thanking the country that gave him a home.